I'm going to talk about a game I have already covered on this channel from an earlier Steam Next Fest a year ago. That game is Deep Rune. I did cover it back when it was in that demo-oriented fest. It was one of the highlights for me, being a nice engrossing game. It's been released since then, and I like the game enough that after playing through it, I want to talk about it even more. Deep Rune is a nice short, turn-based 2D dungeon crawler thing with a huge map to explore. There's gameplay where you need to be really careful, think and consider actions to win fights and collect all the items. If that sounds like it scratches the right itches for you just based on that description, then honestly just boot up the demo and try it. Otherwise, if you listen to me yammer on anymore, you're just gonna get into spoiler territory. Go ahead and keep listening if you want to hear more details on what's hot and what's not in this game, though. As for the game itself, as I've said before, it's a turn-based sort of game with dungeon crawler movement. You're moving around a 2D map, sort of like in a Metroidvania. You have a bunch of rooms that can be left, right, under, or above you, and going to each one is like a separate screen. Sort of like Zelda 1 you could think of, but rooms aren't the same size. You'll be sitting there moving tile to tile, trying to figure out where to go next, how to reach certain items, and most of all, how to take on fights. Managing the enemies is the biggest part of this game, as weapons have limited uses, you've limited numbers of health potions to use, and etc. for all the other items in the game. You'll wind up mousing over enemies to see what moves do the most damage, what defensive plays make you take the least damage, and what enemy fights you could take to get some juicy XP to level up. This was part of the core gameplay element that stuck with me from this game. Every action feels permanent. For example, every health potion you find in the world is generally one less in existence in the game. Every swing of your weapon is one less in the game. However, it's not quite as brutal in practice as that may sound due to several design factors. For one, retrying things is a theme of the game. With a retry button you can use where the room is reloaded, and there's also quick saving and quick loading to use, like in boomer shooters. So you'll be able to retry certain scenarios over and over to find an outcome you like. There is also a shop where you can partially renew some items, although then the money itself is finite. Even with finite items, Deep Rune finds the perfect sweet spot where you do need to carefully consider every turn or move, but you still have some room to make some faster, suboptimal plays. Don't worry about dying, since you can just reload after death, although you can actually choose to accept death if you really want to. This respawns you with full health at the beginning of the game, since if you reloaded the room, you would just reload with whatever health you had before. You can only die this way up to 10 times. There's no permadeath, however. Once you reach this 10 limit, you can't respawn from the beginning anymore, but you can still reload saves. So this is a bit of a missed opportunity. I'm not sure what to think of this death mechanic. I kind of feel like it didn't add much to the game and might as well not exist. I used death to gain health once or twice at the very beginning of the game, when resources were more scarce, but otherwise death never came into play, as just reloading a save or the room is better. Aside from just the fights, another thing you'll notice in the game is several paths to go and very interconnected areas. As you progress throughout Deep Rune, you'll find more and more areas wind up connecting back to where you were before, and there will be new secrets and items to find as you get new tools and spells. This game really hit the right spot for me in terms of exploration. The game does reward you for being thorough. As one example, the shop I mentioned earlier is only useful if you scout out money, and it has a chain of doors you can get through if you hunted keys in the world. There are spells you get in the game, like I mentioned before. You don't start with them, but they get piled on as you play through the game. It's mostly a good curve of adding new mechanics as you go. Some of them are attacks, some of them are secret finders, and some of them are movement spells that let you traverse the map in new ways. You start to get them about halfway through the game. I halfway feel like it might have been slightly too late they were introduced. Maybe that was just because I didn't get to use them that long due to the length of the game though. It's only a few hours of the 5-hour runtime you get to use these movement spells. Towards the end of the game has a really cool twist. I won't spoil it all, but it rewards the map knowledge you gain throughout your journey and flips some mechanics on its head. It's a mountain of whipped cream on top of the full pie of the experience. This twist at the end of the game leads to the final boss fight, and upon rewatching the final boss in my VODs, It's kinda unclear that you actually are at the final boss when you get to it. I could see some less savvy gamers getting to the final boss screen and not being sure what is going on. Guess that's a bit of game cinematic guiding type feedback for the developer. Looking back at that final boss too, maybe it was a little too easy, but maybe I was just a god gamer and too many resources when I played it, not really sure. Once you beat the game, it isn't very replayable, I found. Deep Rune does have some mechanics to try and make you replay. There's different selectable classes to pick upon starting the game. This seems to be a bit more of a roguelite idea. I could see maybe this game in the planning stages was more of a roguelike sort of game. These character choices are what I find the weakest part of the game. I didn't find the different character choices very interesting, as the perks that differentiate them are not very interesting or majorly game-changing. There are hidden unlockable characters, which I guess are supposed to be what bait you into replaying it to unlock them, but I wouldn't take. Perhaps if the game had given hints on how to unlock them, I would have bothered. What I did find interesting for a replay idea is trying to do a no-death, no-save scumming run, since those are sort of core things you will abuse as you play the first time. Despite the lack of replayability, I do think the game is worth it. It's cheap, it's a nice short fun, well-balanced ride. It's a good one night or two game. Sort of an indie game niche I'm noticing is on Steam now, with games like Vampire Survivors, Just King, and this. Presentation-wise, when I look and listen to this game, I'd say this is a nice, dark, and moody game. It's got what I want to say is bare minimum pixel art, but in an endearing way. The game is in a 4:3 aspect ratio, which I find to be a weird decision, especially since the full playfield isn't actually what's 4:3. There's a HUD that takes up space on the right. I guess it's better to have the letterbox black bars on the side instead of some sort of border like a lot of retro compilations do these days. At least that's my preference. Audio-wise, this game is really nice. Got good punchy sound effects, and the music is memorable, atmospheric tracks that really fit in with you slowing down and thinking through your moves. Plus, the developer uploaded the soundtrack right to YouTube, so you can just instantly re-listen whenever. Now finally, let's talk about some boring technical details. Deep Rune is a basic 2D game, so there's no need for an in-depth graphics options menu or anything, but I will go over what is in here. One major issue I found is that there's no control rebindings, despite there being a controls menu within the options. Also, I didn't know else when to mention this, but the developer has an emphasis on mouse control for movement. I didn't quite care for using it. You can use a keyboard to move if you want instead. Don't let the Steam description and tutorial fool you. The only graphics setting in the game is a full screen versus window toggle. There's no specific resolution picking, which I think makes it weirder for people on odd monitor setups. I played this game on Ubuntu Linux, even though there was only a Windows version, thanks to Valve's Proton, and it ran fine. I could see this game working on Steam Deck. Controller controls would probably be a decent fit, although this game doesn't currently have controller support. And the touchscreen and touchpads would probably be a good fit as well. I'm going to leave a Steam link to this game in the description if you want to try it or buy it. If you do wind up buying it, be sure to leave a Steam review whether you like it or not. Right now the game doesn't have enough Steam reviews to be visible in the Steam algorithm. There's a threshold number you have to meet. That's kinda why I made this video. Just thought the game was cool and wanted others to see it. That's all I have to say about Deep Rune. Hope to share other games like this in future roundups with the Steam Next Fests, or just games I find on their own. So keep your eyes peeled for future games, I guess. Whether it be on YouTube here, or through Steam, or any other method you look. Happy game hunting, and peace!